It is Thursday night at 9 o'clock. That means it is time for the Prosperity Report Live with your host, me, John Thomas, and your Libertarian candidate for United States Senate, also me, John Thomas. We might have Drew stopping by a little bit later to join us, but right now it's just me. And today's episode, I did give you a little bit of a teaser of what the episode would be about in the Facebook post for this, which is the abortion episode. It is an issue that we need to address as libertarian candidates. A little bit of history on the abortion issue from a libertarian perspective. The Libertarian Party used to be formally a pro-abortion, pro-choice party. That changed a couple years ago at the Reno National Convention, where they got rid of the pro-choice plank. And now it is a neutral party on that issue. Today, we'll get into some of my views on abortion, but it is something that we need to talk about because, and I've only shared my screen a couple times on here. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So I want to share with you this survey. This is a survey of the most important issues for suburban women in swing states. Pennsylvania is a swing state, so I'm assuming that Pennsylvanians were surveyed for this particular poll. And we have at the number one issue by a pretty comfortable lead is the issue of abortion, with 39% of respondents saying that was the most important issue. Immigration is in second place with 16%, economy 7%, anti-left-wing ideology is 4%, inflation at 4%, and anti-white right-wing ideology is at 3%. I don't know what those anti-left-wing are like. Does that mean that they are it's an important issue because they are left wing? I don't understand that. But regardless, those aren't the issues that we're talking about today. One issue that I did think was very interesting that was not on this list is climate change. 10 years ago, we were told that in 10 years, we were going to experience cataclysmic climate change. So you would think that suburban women in Pennsylvania at this point would be a very high issue on them. I mean, after all, everyone would be moving from the coastal areas that are now underwater and to Pennsylvania. And we'd be like, maybe that's the immigration they're concerned about. It's people fleeing coastal areas within the United States and coming to Pennsylvania. But no, that's not what they're concerned about. It's funny. It's almost like that cataclysmic climate change that they said would happen in 10 years ago just didn't happen. And it kind of just went away. So since that went away, we have a new issue that everyone's concerned about, and that is the issue of abortion. So where do I stand on abortion? I am a pro-life libertarian. As a matter of fact, many years ago, I had left the Libertarian Party because I just couldn't see myself being part of a party that was pro-choice, and the Libertarian Party had a pro-choice plank. And several people, part of what's called the Mises Caucus, got together, and there was also a pro-life caucus within the Libertarian Party, got together and made a push to get that pro-choice plank removed. So now the party is neutral, and so I joined the party in part to help move it in that direction. So why am I pro? Why am I pro-life? The answer is that I really believe that life begins at conception, and if life begins at conception, then pro-life is the libertarian position. Now, I will grant that if life does not begin at conception, if life begins at birth, then pro-life is absolutely not the libertarian position. If you're if you are legislating what somebody can do with her own body, and it is just with tissue that's located in her body that's not living, that's not a new life, then it's absolutely unlibertarian to legislate what somebody can do with that. But if it is a different person, if it's a different human being, then I think the libertarian position is to be pro-life. So it's one of those things that really we need to define when life begins. So philosophers have been debating this back and forth for a long time, and I think that the correct answer is that it begins at conception. But I don't want to just claim that. I want to back that up. So biologically, there are different conditions that must be met in order for something to be considered living. For example, living things grow. Growth is part of the definition of things that are living. So if I look at this cell phone right here, it's not alive and it's not growing. Like it's very clearly not alive, because if it were alive, it would have the capacity for growth. But like a stalactite grows and it's not alive either. So growth is a necessary but not sufficient condition for living. A human fetus clearly grows. That's one of the fastest growing times in the human developmental cycle is whenever it's a fetus. So it does meet that definition. Metabolism, the ability to take food and turn it into energy. That is something that's necessary for life, and a human fetus does that. It takes in nutrients, it converts it to energy. Homeostasis, that is something that's needed. The ability to maintain a steady environment for yourself. My thermostat does that. And it's not alive. It maintains a constant temperature in the room. So again, this is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition, because there are things that can maintain homeostasis without being being alive. Response to stimulants. That's a condition. So any pregnant woman can tell you that her baby responds to different stimulus, that if she sleeps the wrong way, the baby will be act one way. If she pushes on her belly one way, the baby's going to act another way. So again, a baby does that. Organization is a necessary condition for life. So people claim that a baby is a clump of cells. Well, in a sense, I guess you could say we're all a clump of cells. Like we're all made out of cells, and our cells are alive. And they'll say, oh yeah, the cells of the fetus are alive, but it's just like a clump of cells. And I guess in a sense you could say that about all of us. But we all have this organization where we have systems within us that work together to produce all these other functions of life that make us who we are. And a baby has those, or an unborn fetus, an embryo has those systems developing too and organized together. So and then finally the last one is reproduction, and this is the one that's probably lacking. Like a fetus cannot reproduce, but neither can a 3-year-old, and neither can a postmenopausal woman or a male with erectile dysfunction. Like these can't reproduce, but they're part of a species that can and does reproduce. So given its natural development, that fetus would develop to a point where it could reproduce. So those are all the conditions necessary for life. A human fetus meets them all. So it is a life form. And what kind of life form is it? Well, I just said it's a human fetus. It's not a dog fetus. It's not a cat fetus. It is a human fetus. That's what we call it, because it is a human. So it is a human life. And that's very important, that we have to define that it is a human life. And at that point, I think that the libertarian position of the non-aggression principle comes into play here, where you do not initiate aggression against another human. And so that fetus being a human life matters from a libertarian perspective, that you do not initiate aggression against a human life. So I thought I would start by defining why I think that an unborn baby is a human life, and then I thought I would address some of the common the common pro-choice arguments for why we for abortion. So, Drew, do you have any of those arguments up that you could lay on me here?
Yes, yeah, I have pulled up from your forthcoming ebook, Freedom First, which is on its way in a matter of days.
You said it on the air, Drew. So now it has to happen.
Yeah, we're at the doorstep. I think I have found the most viable solution to deliver John's ebook to the masses. Just for those that are watching, if you're interested in getting John's free ebook when it releases very soon, head over to his Substack and subscribe. So not only will you get John's regular articles that he's been writing along the campaign trail, both on his thoughts and also his trip across Pennsylvania, but also you will get the ebook once it is ready to go. So yeah, I've scrolled down to your portion here on abortion, and let me see. Yep, the section with the various pro-abortion arguments and your response. So we can start with number one, which is my body, my choice.
All right, my body, my choice. So really, I think every law that is on the books in some way regulates what you can and cannot do with your body. Whether it's the income tax, which says if you use your body to earn an income, you have to submit part of that income to the state. That's regulating what you can and cannot do with your body. To the flag code, which says how you ought to use your body to fold up the American flag. It's all legislation in some way deals with what we can and cannot do with our body. As a libertarian, I think, as a libertarian Christian, as a matter of fact, I think that humans have the stewardship over their own bodies. So you ought to be in control of your own body and make decisions about what happens with your own body. I am for example, I'm against drug laws. I'm certainly against the vaccine mandates that Joe Biden wanted to impose on all of us. That was an issue where he was denying body autonomy. But there is a sense that whenever there's another body involved, you have to take a look at it at a different level. And I actually wanted to look at a case that happened in Ohio a couple years ago. So let me see if I can share my screen again and see if it works again. All right. So this was the case of Jalen Candelario. And this was in Cleveland, Ohio. Jalen's mother decided that she wanted to take her body on a vacation to Puerto Rico. She had a 16-month baby at the time who she did not want to take with her on this vacation to Puerto Rico. So she left the baby in its playpen, or I guess what people call today a pack and play. She left this baby in the pack and play for 10 days while she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. She chose to use her body to go on vacation instead of choosing to use her body to take care of this child. Now, should the state be able to mandate that somebody uses his or her body to care for another human being? In this case, the state did mandate that she had to use her body to care for this human being. She could not just choose to take her body to Puerto Rico and leave the baby in a playpen for 10 days while the baby screamed in agony, while the baby slowly starved to death, while the baby was forced to eat its own feces while it struggled to survive, while it was heard crying on the baby monitors. No, she could not leave that baby there alone to suffer and die the way she did, because there are limits to what we can and cannot do with our body once we bring a new life into this world. She brought this life into this world, and therefore she was responsible for the care of this life. And that's something that we need to consider. Like, if you bring life into this world, who is responsible for caring for that life? And my thought is it's the parents who are responsible for this. So this woman ended up getting sentenced to life in prison over this. The fact that she and it wasn't an act of direct murder. It was an act of negligence. Any law on negligence, against negligence, is telling you that you must use your body to do a certain thing. Like, if you neglect a child, you are not using your body in a way that the law says you should. So this was a 16-month-old child. If we've established that a fetus is a living, breathing child, then it makes sense that you can't, either through negligence or obviously direct force, kill a child at that age, just as you couldn't another age. So, Drew, you want to give me another one?
Yeah, I lost my place there for a second. Okay. If you do not have a uterus, then you can't have an opinion.
All right. So logic is something that doesn't really have a gender. If you say 2 + 2 = 4, I can't say that. Well, to talk in twos, you need to be a twin, really. Like you're just a single individual. Like, you ought to be a twin to talk in twos. No, that's not how it works. Logic does not have a gender. And as a matter of fact, if anything, if you think that you need to have an emotional attachment to something to have an opinion on it, I think that's kind of reverse of how we think in most cases. If I were a judge sitting and hearing a case, and the defendant that comes before me is my own daughter, what do I have to do? I have to step aside, because I am too attached to the case to be objective about it. And if you're saying you have to have some sort of emotional connection to the issue to have an opinion on it, that's actually backwards. If you have an emotional attachment to the issue, then you're actually going to be less objective to it. So I think that all people can have an opinion on abortion, because it is an issue that affects humans. So I wouldn't make the claim that unless you're a fetus, you can't have an opinion on abortion. I wouldn't make the claim unless you're a parent, you can't have an opinion on abortion. Anybody can have an opinion on abortion, because it is a free country, and it is an issue that affects humans.
Okay, the next one is, it's not really a baby, it's a fetus or embryo.
All right. This one, there's some truth to this. Baby could be defined as a newborn or an infant. And in that sense, an unborn fetus or embryo is not a baby. It's a fetus or embryo. Baby could also have a broader definition. It could include the fetus or embryo and up through a toddler. I've heard people call toddlers babies. Heck, I may have said a couple weeks ago that we moved my baby into college. She's 18, so um, there's a sense that we use that term more broadly and less broadly. But regardless, whether we say embryo, fetus, infant, newborn infant, toddler, child, adolescent, young adult, adult, senior citizen, these are all stages of human life. And the rights that you have do not vary depending on what stage of human development you're in. I can't say that just because an infant is not a toddler, the infant doesn't have rights. I can't say that just because a toddler is not a child, the toddler does not have rights. And so on and so forth. So the idea that because a newborn or a fetus is not the same as a newborn, that it doesn't stem that therefore the fetus doesn't have rights. It's just different stages of a human development. So humans have rights, and one of those rights is that you should not be guilty or you should not be aggressed against by another human.
Okay, number 4 is you are restricting my reproductive rights.
Well, really, laws against abortion don't restrict reproductive rights. Like the moment of reproduction is whenever the baby is conceived. That is whenever reproduction happens, and you're free to do that. You're free to choose not to do that. A law on abortion doesn't change that. I don't know any state that outlaws people from reproducing. There are states with restrictions on abortion, but in all of those states, you're allowed to reproduce. So that's just an odd term, like the reproduction rights. I think everyone has the right to reproduce everywhere in America.
All right, the next one is there are no laws that regulate men's bodies.
There are plenty of laws that regulate men's bodies. The first one that comes to mind is the selective service. Every male has to register for selective service, the draft, and women do not. And there is a possibility that men literally have to either be forced to kill another human being in a war or go to prison. This is a reality for men. So there's that law, but really every law on the books regulates what men can do with their body. We've already established that every law on the books says what you can and cannot do with your body, from an income tax to a flag code. So men have bodies, and they act with those bodies, and I think it's like for every one woman in jail, there's like 9 men in jail. So men are being thrown in jail for things that they do with their bodies all the time. There's nobody in jail who's in jail for a thought crime yet. I mean, we might be moving in that direction. I hope we stop moving in that direction. But so far, nobody's in jail for a thought crime. They're all in there for things that they've done with their body, or as the case with Crystal, what's her name? Candelario. Things that she chose not to do with her body. She chose not to take care of her kid with her body, and now she's in jail. So it's all things that we either do or do not do with our body that lands people in jail.
Yeah, let's not issue the thought crimes thing as a challenge. Let's say we should try to stay as far away from that one as possible. All right, the next one is unless you are willing to financially support every unwanted baby, you must support abortion.
And I think you froze there, or maybe I froze.
All right, number 6 is unless you are willing to financially support every unwanted baby, you must support abortion. Can you hear me, John? Oh, looks like we're losing John. Or John's losing me. Someone is speaking live right now to an audience, and the other one is frozen. If it is me, I will go back again and remind everyone that these questions are coming from John's ebook, which is titled Freedom First. It will be available very soon for free to all subscribers to John's Substack. And I think it was John that froze up there for a second, because it's now showing that I'm the only person in here. So, yeah, so John's ebook is going to be available for free to all subscribers to his Substack. I will say, from a campaign manager side of things with the Substack, one of the goals is for us to continue building on the ideas and sharing the ideas outside of just a campaign for office. And I think that John is one of the best people we have in Pennsylvania doing that. And it looks like he's back, so I can stop filling. John, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Sorry about that. I think some Joe says John got aborted from the stream. Yes, that's what happened. Yeah. So the one about financially supporting unwanted babies.
Yes.
I think it's perfectly acceptable to say I don't think babies should be killed, but I also think parents ought to support their own children. I don't think those are mutually exclusive concepts. I think that you can require people to support their own kids and also not kill their kids. These are not these two things actually support one another rather than are at odds with one another.
All right. Number 7, if you make abortion illegal, they will happen anyway. They will just be more dangerous.
Yeah. That might be true. But there are other things that we make illegal that I think that it's still okay to make them illegal, like murder itself. It might be less dangerous to hire a hitman to take out that person you don't like than you doing it yourself. You might cause a lot more collateral damage because you're not a professional. A hitman might do it very surgically and strategically, but we still outlaw hiring hitmen because despite the fact that it might be more dangerous to do it yourself, we still think that there's a society benefits from outlawing murder.
All right. Number 8 is you want a rape victim to carry the baby of her rapist.
Actually, I don't. I actually don't want people to be raped. That is probably the one of the worst things that can happen to a human being. As a father of a rape victim, I can attest that is a devastating thing, and I don't want people to suffer that. But yeah, it's just I don't want people to be raped. So I obviously don't want people to carry the babies of their rape victims because their rapists, because I don't want those rapists to exist. I want to have a society where we punish rape, where we don't tolerate that. But one of the things that rapists do quite often is if a rape does end up in a pregnancy, the rapist quite often encourages the girl to have an abortion, because that's evidence of the crime. The baby itself is evidence of the crime. So the rapist wants to cover up for that, and the way that he does that is by encouraging abortion. So I don't think that having massive rates of abortion is helpful to rape victims at all.
All right, the next one, the woman owns her body and the baby is trespassing.
All right, this one is a very very good one to tackle from a libertarian standpoint, because we as libertarians love property rights, and we hate trespassing. So the baby is trespassing within the woman's body. Well, in consensual sex, whenever there's consensual sex happens, there is sort of an invitation there to invite a child into the home. It's kind of, if I were to invite somebody onto a cruise ship that was going to be out on the ocean for 9 months, if I invite the person there and we're out for a month and I say, you know what, I really don't want you here anymore. I'm going to throw you overboard because this is my property. And I'm choosing not to have you here anymore. That we would say that's not acceptable. You by inviting the person on aboard the boat, you kind of entered into a contract that you were going to see to it that that person would get back to shore. So the it's very similar with the case of a child. If you engage in an act that's very likely to produce a child, like it's we all know how babies are made. Like we've all had those birds and bees talks with our parents or with our whenever we were separated by boys and girls in the 5th grade in our government schools. We all know how those babies are made, and if you're engaging in one of those acts that could result in a baby being made, you are inviting that baby onto the property. As long as it's consensual. If it is the case of rape, that does make this argument a much more substantial argument, because in that case the baby is not invited. I still think there's a moral reason why you should keep the baby, but it does make the trespassing argument a little bit more have a little bit more teeth to it.
Okay, the next one. If you really cared about kids' lives, you would want guns to be outlawed.
Well, this is a poignant one this week, right? Because we just had another mass shooting in a school in Georgia. My thoughts and prayers are with the families affected by that school shooting. But murder is illegal. Murdering kids in school is illegal. If we outlaw abortion, that doesn't mean forceps and scissors and other surgical tools that are used to commit abortion would be outlawed. It means the act itself would be outlawed. Similarly, we outlaw murder. We don't outlaw the tools that are used to commit murder. The murder can be committed with guns. It can be committed with knives. There's a lot of talk of knife violence in the UK right now. They're talking about surging rates of knife violence. And I find that interesting that they need that adjective to go with violence for some reason. Just call it violence, and call murder, call whether it's committed with a knife or a gun. But yeah, I don't think that outlawing the tool that commits it is the same as outlawing the act itself. Used to commit it is the same as outlawing the act itself.
All right, and the last argument listed here is: aren't you a libertarian? Libertarians should not be telling others what they can and cannot do with their bodies.
Yeah, well, the foundation of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle, and the non-aggression principle states that man should not commit aggression against his fellow man, and those acts of aggression are committed with your body. So the principle on which libertarianism is founded specifically says something that you cannot do with your body. You cannot use it to initiate aggression. So if abortion is against a living human being, then it is indeed an act of aggression. So we addressed all those. I did want to point out, though, that a law against abortion is not going to stop abortion. Abortion is going to happen, especially right now in our culture. In our culture, babies are no longer a blessing in a lot of cases. Throughout most of human history, babies were a blessing. In countries far poorer than the poorest Americans, babies were seen as a blessing. And the reason babies were seen as a blessing is because babies were, well, there are many reasons babies are a blessing. If you hold a baby for 5 minutes, you'll see why a baby's a blessing. You don't need an intellectual argument. But one of the economic reasons that babies are seen as a blessing is because babies are a instrument of social security. If you have 4 or 5 kids that survive to adulthood, and you reach an old age where you're incapable of working, and even if the government screws over your retirement account, the fact that you have younger kids working uh, allows you to sustain yourself through those advanced years. But because of social security, we basically socialize kids in the same sense that like Cuba socialized industry. We are taking kids and saying that no longer the people who invest in them reap the rewards from them, but society reaps the rewards. And anytime you take a say that this private investment is going to be made into public profits, you get less of that private investment. So if I were to say we're going to nationalize the farms, we would get less. People would start eating their seed corn because you're going to get less and less of the private investment. So whenever we socialized kids, that's what we did with Social Security. No longer do the people who invested in the kids, in their upbringing, in providing for their food and their shelter and their clothing whenever they're young, no longer those people who invested in the kids get the rewards of that investment, but now all of society gets those rewards, including those people who don't have kids. So you have more and more people who choose not to have kids, and then those kids are socialized around the economy. So I think that we need to rethink how we manage our family affairs and how we structure our society in order to allow kids to be a blessing again. And that is probably the main way that we're going to prevent abortion, is by making kids a blessing again.
Yeah, and I think we've had this conversation just personally a couple of times, but I know we've had it in some other groups too. Um, I think that one of the biggest challenges that the pro-life movement faces right now is this kind of like zero-sum game of federal policy being the ultimate determining factor of victory for the pro-life movement. Um, there are so many things that we can do on a communal level, at a personal level, within our own homes to promote a pro-life society. One of which, being all encompassing on pro-life, being pro-life, like as you said, from conception the whole way through the end of life. How do we emphasize private property rights and private property rights and libertarian values to further a society of being pro human life. There's a lot of different ways that we can do that besides focusing all of our energy on federal policy. And also the point that you brought up, I think that a lot of other federal policy directly impacts our society's value for human life. One of the things that we talk about all the time is, the empire building and the endless wars stretches the American dollar through printing, through inflation. And what happens in a fiat currency society is that you start to see time preferences shoot through the roof within the society. People are no longer focused 50, 60 years planning, budgeting. They're no longer valuing their kids as a long-term, both economic and just human investment of their time. And so that, itself is going to lead to a society that doesn't really value human life, value birth and family. So I think that, for people that will hear, these arguments and kind of, take a step back and say, like, or they'll hear pro-life and they'll be like, oh, I'm not pro-life, I'm pro-choice, because that's just, it's a buzzword that on both sides that they claim to, pro-life, pro-choice, and they kind of get their policy information from those two words. I think that, engaging with the discussion, and I think that a vast majority of people want to see us live in a society that values life more. And
absolutely.
So I think that's kind of the bigger picture here, is that, like, by having these discussions on, defining what is life, defining how we can create a better society for human life, I think that's really the step in the right direction that we need to take. And at this point, especially at the federal level, between Republicans and Democrats, it's become literally a two-word argument. Are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? And that's not getting us anywhere.
Yeah, and speaking of valuing human life, I'm going to issue a challenge to Dave McCormick right now to stop all international funding to countries that have government-funded abortions. This would immediately put an end to all of America's funding of Israel and the war that's going on in Gaza. By valuing lives includes valuing lives in places like Gaza, in places like Iran, and places like Russia, even places where we think they are bad guys. We still need to value lives in those places. And I call on Dave McCormick to join me. Dave McCormick says he's pro-life. Join me in saying that we will not support international funding to countries that support or government-funded abortion. Even Bob Casey, who used to be pro-life and is now pro-choice, you say you're pro-choice. Stop the funding for countries that have government-funded abortion, because people aren't able to choose whether or not they fund those abortions. Be pro-choice. Stop that funding. Casey. McCormick, be pro-life. Stop that funding. I call on both of them to stand by their principles and stop the funding to countries that have government-funded abortions.
And even beyond that, I think challenging Bob Casey to be more pro-choice in other areas of life is acceptable. Medical freedom would be a nice choice that I think a lot of people wish they had more of in the past couple of years, or past few years. On the pro-choice side, I think that the biggest critique, much like, one of the big critiques on the pro-life side is, extending that to your other policy positions. I think on the pro-choice side, you really have to look in the mirror and say, am I pro-choice on all things, or am I pro-choice on this select thing? Medical freedom, I think it's the big one that stands out to me, just because of how prevalent it's been in recent history. But pro-choice, the pro-choice side of things, I think could do some good by being much more pro-choice on a lot of other things.
Yes, it seems there's only one choice there, bro. That's the only choice. Like, can I choose to make this tweet today? No. Can I choose not to get this vaccine? No. Is there any choice that you'll allow me to make? You want to kill your kid? That's about it. That's the pro-choice side really seems to limit the amount of choice that they mean by choice there. Well, Drew, any other closing thoughts on this?
No, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Like I said, for people that are watching this either live or afterwards, I think the main takeaway really should be to grapple with the ideas, to understand what exactly your argument is supporting, and most of all, just continue to advocate for, I guess, a more free and pro pro people society. We got to
Pro people society. I like that. I
well,
like that. Pro people.
and I kind of liked it when I said it, but then I thought of it goes. It can be. I'm sure that's been manipulated before, but you get what I'm saying. You know,
Yeah.
let's be pro-human here.
Yes, yes. And I think the non-aggression principle is the best way we achieve a pro-human society where we just choose not to initiate acts of aggression against one another. So that is the theme running through every single one of these episodes, is that we choose not to initiate acts of aggression against one another. So continue to live that peaceful life and continue to prosper, and we will all make Pennsylvania better. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.